I am really honored and pleased to introduce to you our guest speaker today, which is Dr. Elisabeth Schlegel. She's an associate professor for faculty development and medical education research in the Department of Science Education at the Zucker School of Medicine in Hofstra, Northwell. And she's a microbiologist by training, so she has some interprofessional background for us, and she had teaching in Austria as well as the US, especially in microbiology and virology. And she enjoys curriculum development and global healthcare leadership and continuous education and professional development in faculty. So I'm really pleased for her to address today's topic of student involvement and scholarship and research education. So I hand the word over to Elisabeth.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me. This is really exciting and awesome. And I deeply appreciate the topic because, as I just chatted before you all joined us, faculty has the same struggle. It's not just students at all, but at the same time, it is so important that we also look into research and get involved into scholarship, because only if we ask questions and look behind the scenes, we can really drive the field and in the end leave the world a better place. And it's all about patient care. And only if we are skeptical a little bit and look behind and find solutions, we really can help our patients as much as we can. I'm really excited, by the way, that this is truly a global opportunity. Thank you so much. It's really awesome. My email address will be on my talk. Please send me emails if you have any additional questions. I will be around at AMEE, of course. So I love to hear back. Let me know. Let me also know if you have specific questions, and then we can address it one-on-one. More than happy to do this. All right, so I will share my screen now. Okay.
Can see it.
Okay, you guys are good? Briefly, so I was asked to make it interactive, and I actually should not be asked to do this. It should be second nature, right? So there is quite a bit didactic in here that I will give you some frameworks about, but there will be 2 polls and there will be 1 breakout. And it's super important that you really consult each other in this breakout, because I want to hear from you and I want to learn from you, and you want to learn from each other. And one of the things that we learned majorly into all discussion sessions, there is already so much knowledge and wisdom in the room. You might not be aware of that, but we bring all our backgrounds, all our culture. We all work very hard to build our dreams, to build research, to build a better medicine, right? Teach each other, consult with each other, let us know, and then we will bring it all together and hopefully move forward. Okay, but medical education and research it is today, so let's get into this. Now, briefly for housekeeping, but I think I'll leave this to Alec. You know how you want to do it. I see you all muted anyways. Use the chat box or raise the hand if you would like to, contribute something. And I would like to ask Philippa to please have an eye, because on my screen I don't really see the chat, to kind of stop me and say, yo, that's an important thing. Okay, in the breakout rooms, I was asked by a student to introduce netiquette, which means encourage everybody's participation. Everything is important. You might not believe so, but it is. I leave camera on and off, I leave the camera on or off, totally up to you. If you feel safe, you want to do it. I love to see people. Unfortunately, I don't see too many folks on my screen here, but it's always nice to have once in a while a face show up and, who you're talking to. Anyways, let's move forward. Okay, every good session is supposed to have learning objectives, right? So learning objectives really have a deeper meaning. It really means if you move out of the session in 1 hour today, I want you to be able to discuss briefly some frameworks of medical education, research, and scholarship, because we gotta know the shoulders of the giants we are walking off, right? A lot of people had the same problems than we did, and they gave us solutions, and we can hopefully advance the field from here. I also want you to be able to identify domains to draw from for medical education research. And my point from this is that you all will probably go into teaching one or the other way. And you might also look into advance your own knowledge with, let's say, a profession, a healthcare, a master in healthcare education one or the other way, or a medical education pedagogy master somewhere, right? And this is exactly connected to this. So you see how close all these components come together. And then there are certain components of medical education, research, and scholarship. Just like every other fields, there are some very important types of research that you will not find anywhere else. We will not use a microscope, right? So we will use other things. So that's important to know about that. And we will talk about effective medical education research and strategies. So in order to really get this thing going, it's not that complicated. I just make it sound complicated, but it's actually not that bad. Okay, so here's something that I want to assure you of. You all have the first raw knowledge of medical education. It's simply because you are the ones who's sitting there every day and who are on the receiving end of whatever faculty comes up with. Now, what we forget very often is that faculty are also humans, right? And have to kind of look, what's new in the field? Oh my God, it's so much. We have to take something out to put something in, right? In the end, rarely any program is done in a not hasty way, right? Usually things are really hectic, right? We try to do the best. And then you are the students, of course, you kind of have to go through that and have to see how it works. And that's why it is so important that our students really know what works, how does it work in order to drive the field, because in the end, you will be the ones who take over from us as faculty, right? And take our curricula and drive them forward. So it is so important that you become aware that you are really the experts in getting of this education, in feeling and receiving this experience. And hopefully with the information I can give you today, you get some tools to dissect this experience in order to make it better for the future. So here we get a little bit into the background. And I might say that from Europe to America to everywhere, every culture had their own geniuses in driving education, driving scholarship. In America, one of the most important people we need to know is Ernest Boyer. Ernest Boyer, Chancellor of SUNY, so State University in New York, but also a leader in the Carnegie Foundation of teaching advancement in the United States. A very important group of people who really drove and advanced teaching, noticed that there was a problem, an inherent problem with scholarship, the way it was done and the way it is still done and the way it is traditionally perceived. Here's the thing, if you ask anyone on the street and say, what do you think research is? They say, find out how COVID works in a lab, right? Taking a mouse and sticking a needle into it. Yeah, well, that's one of it, right? But what do we people know that we are the teachers, right? What do we people do that we have other aspirations? And the thing is, there is so much that we can give as medical educators, right? We can give textbooks, we can give guidance, we can give advocacy, we can give policies, we can really advance the field, advance the world, right? Give a better patient care. So if scholarship only stops with sticking a needle into a mouse, that can be all, right? And Ernest Boyer really duly recognized it and said, well, there is more. And he identified 4, some people say 5, it's actually initially really 4 different categories of scholarship. And they were discovery, integration, application, teaching. Okay, what's what? So discovery is the traditional one, the one that we say, okay, we have the idea about the Koch's postulate ideas in our minds, right? Let's try something out. Let's sit in the lab. Let's throw it under the microscope. Let's see what happens. Write a paper. That's it. Discovery is fine. And I might say so that even when you look into the effectiveness of teaching, there is some discovery. So you can't get around discovery, but it's not anymore the bench science. It's way, way, way more. There is also integration. And what integration means is really, really cool. It means that you look into additional fields of science. Let's say social science. Social science has completely different means of collecting knowledge, right? They observe. Let's talk about anthropology. Oh, anthropology is important. Anthropologists walk into, let's say, a community and sit down and try not to get kind of too much involved and observe and see what's happening and bring what they perceived as working back into the scientific community. Now think about it, that some people somewhere suffer from malnutrition and you send in an anthropologist to figure out why, right? That person might tell you how it works because they might figure out how their society works. Again, this is a completely different field, but it's important for us. Okay, integration. Application means engagement. It means writing a book. It means disseminating in one or the other ways. And guess what? It's not just a research paper. There are so many ways to do this. Okay, application and then teaching. Hello, here we are, right? We will be in the end clinician educators. That means we will not just teach medical students, guys. No, we will teach our colleagues, our patients. We might be approached by groups to say, we can figure out why there's always a certain types of problems in our disease coming up in our community. Can you come up with some smart sheets or some app or something else, right? That's all teaching. And here you are medical doctors, you will be approached to do exactly that. And now I throw all these things on you, and these are big concepts, and I'm naturally getting excited about all of them. But I would like to take a pause here and look into the chat and ask you guys just for some glimpse of thoughts that come up about this. So when I'm telling you that you will have to deal with all these 4 different types of scholarship, what are your thoughts about that? Write it in the chat. And I can make a start.
There's nothing in the chat box right now, but I'll just give my input. So I think for not English native, scholarship is a very obscure word. I could never identify anything with it. You know, the scholarship, that's something where you get money. It's not that easy to define, but then there are a lot of people who define it differently, which is really interesting. And I really love the part of integration that you just explained, because I think it's one of the most important fields that's neglected most often, even during different disciplines, in between different disciplines in medicine. So there will be the cardiologist and there will be the oncologist, and they may have things in common or methods that could profit from looking at each other, but it's really seldomly done because there's always so much in our own fields, but it's really worthwhile integrating between those fields.
Thank you, Philip. I agree with that. And that's probably a very important question that you just raised. What is scholarship? I would say in a nutshell, it's discovery and dissemination. Because inherently discovery or novelty is probably in all of these 4 categories. Doesn't matter what it is, and it will show you how to figure that out. But it can stop there. You have to bring it out to the world. And that doesn't need to be everybody. It can be only a small defined group, but sharing, that's important. And then ideally you get some feedback when people say, wow, you really changed the world a little bit.
So
questions. Oh, that is very nice.
There's another question that's it's the science of answering unknown questions and disseminating already answered ones.
Excellent. Thank you very much, especially if you answered that question. But it also includes you review what important questions other people already figured out. And in order to really drive home the point, you disseminate this in reviews and other things. Absolutely. This would also work, let's say, in spec sheets, right? So it doesn't have to be super new, but if you are able to bring it in a form that serves as a certain community, perfect. All right. Keep it going, guys, but I will also keep going. So we definitely can keep the chat going as we go ahead. One idea at a time. Okay, so now I gave you the idea that there are several ideas of scholarship. And here's the big deal. You are the experts already. I wrote a blog about that, and sorry, I really did. Students always have been very recognized as very important in the entire process of moving the field, moving education, moving medical schools. You might not feel it that way, but historically, there had been at least movements across the world to make it happen, especially in the 60s. There was, in the United States, one of the first conferences where students really needed to raise their voice and get involved into how medical schools work. And it is very important. And at least most communities and most committees at the university level include some student voices, because it wouldn't work any other way. It has to be together forward. Otherwise, we will not move medical schools. Now, you as students, what are the roles that you can definitely do? You can become a co-researcher. And by the way, forget about the co, you can become a researcher, absolutely. You can become a consultant. I mean, faculty better ask you and say, well, did this really work? Did this? And sometimes when I gave my lectures, right, you would write a little email to the class and say, sorry, guys, I tried something new. Was that useful, right? And people let you know. So you got to really work with the students on your education. Otherwise, you will not grow as a faculty either. Big point, right? Representative, very important. Get involved with groups. Represent your body, your needs as a student body with faculty for others, simply because medical schools, very often we don't really know how a certain class, how a certain cohort, what are the problems that they're tackling. We have assumptions, right? And we ask individual members, but it is very, very important that this is something that goes together. It says we are expert students. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. So true. I hope I'm still an expert student, but I'm afraid I have to do so much other stuff. So, but I still try to learn as much as I can. And most important, pedagogical co-designer. And this is really a big deal. Again, you drive education, and try as soon as possible to learn how education works and how curricula are getting together. So get in committees, ask faculty, get involved, because then you hear a lot of things and you also hear the problems on both sides. It's not just that faculty has it all easy and students have it all hard. It's both sides. You know, we really have to keep the field moving and have to move both forward. But in a nutshell, you students have such an important role, and you really have to seize that role and seize this opportunity and learn from each other, and also cross-pollinate with faculty and move the fields. Now, last but not least, more and more, at least at our university, we also involve students more and more into assessments and feedback. There are large surveys that's done when studies are over, simply to learn how something works. But there are also studies done, and there's also feedback done in between the years, simply because we need to know how students are doing. And we need to know where a medical school has to make it better in order to just provide a really effective experience and education for our students. So co-research, a co-designer of education is an important function of all of you that you are here, and all the students and every students that you meet. And do not let them off the hook, let them know. And it might not be super obvious. It might be only a nucleus, depending on the school, depending on the culture. And again, I talked with Philippa before that. If you have a huge class size, it will be hard systemically to find one researcher you're hooking up with. That might be true, but there might be other opportunities then. There might be groups that you can found and whatnot. But let's get into this. Lo and behold, you are very important. It is entire orchestrated experience that you get.
We have a few comments. So Tomas said, scholars are leaders, and attainment to the competencies comes from self-leadership. Firstly, from self-recognition that we have an important role to answer questions and disseminate them. Relying solely on the institutional background of our respective medical education institutions is unfortunately simply not enough. I think I agree with that. And then there's a question, do you think students should also help to create these surveys? Tiana.
Okay, well, participants, do you think students should co-create these surveys? Yeah, well, duh. So here's one thing. It depends on the school if there is a role for students to participate, right? And some institutions, especially the newer ones, they have these roles, they build these roles, and old institutions or more traditional ones might make it in a different way. However, there is always the individual that can start asking a question, and you can do it in a nice way, and you can find advocates for you, and you either hook up with a researcher who has the same question, or to any kind of dean who drives students' matters forward and collaborate. And believe me, as faculty, you're very happy when you have students or folks who have interest to collaborate with you, to have a smart conversation with you, right? And usually things can happen naturally in a natural way. So it doesn't very often have to be an official place on a committee, but it can be a coffee lounge. It can be a conversation over lunch. It can be a committee where you join. It can be a suggestion. It can be, and very often, I don't know, you find somebody taking a pause, sitting somewhere, and you approach a professor and say, hey, I have this question, and I have this idea, could we do this and this and this? And you start the conversation. And you might feel uneasy sometimes, like we all do, right? It's like approaching a celebrity sometimes, but actually faculty are really happy when students approach them and come up with ideas. It always depends how you do it, right? But I think every need and every cause that students drive forward has merit. So when you present it as that, maybe the first person might not have time, but maybe the second or third person will. So it is very important that you do get involved, because in the end, you might get back to the same institution and drive this institution forward as a professor. And ideally, I mean, I would love to have my students come back and be teachers at my place, because I know that they would have the same philosophy and drive to place. So thank you very much. I see a lot of things come here. So I just would like to go back to, relying solely on institution background. That is true, but don't forget, knowledge is growing exponentially, right? And needs are growing exponentially. We don't even know the dreams of tomorrow. We don't. So you guys know, you students know. So you also have to teach the institution in a certain way about what your needs are and what your opportunities are. And coming together in places like this, right? This is the best way to cross-pollinate. All right, let's move on in the interest of time, guys. So all the nice things that I told you about this are good and fine, right? So I gave you, well, there's different scholarships, right? And you should be co-creators when you actually know that your stuff is actually worth something. So there was a collaborator with Boyer who had the same problem, that he says, well, different scholarships is wonderful, but we need criteria to know that they're actually worth their value. Because everybody can write about everything, right? But you really want to make something substantial, and you want to have criteria behind it that have a certain standard. Hence, Charles Classic introduced what we now know as Classic's criteria. So he came up with really different standards that are still absolutely used in medical education peer review to see if medical education research is anything good. Here they are. Are there clear goals? And it's probably a lot of things that you already know. Is there adequate preparation? That means, did you really look into the field? What's out there? Did you read up? Did you talk to people? Did you know the giants in the field? What are appropriate methods, right? Did you use a microscope for look into social sciences? Did you use the methods that you had to? Did you find significant results? Or is there a lot of background noise, right? And you're not sure. Significant results. Did you also provide an effective presentation? And this can be any kind of dissemination. It can be a research paper, it can be a talk to a student body, like this, right? And this is the most important thing, because otherwise we won't learn. Is there reflective critique, which means that we know our limits, we know our boundaries, we have an idea how to stretch these boundaries, but we know what we don't know, and we humbly agree that we are at a certain step and certain milestones will be necessary. So these are Classic's criteria. Very important, still used in order to figure out if actually our work is any good. Now, I gave you the most important cornerstones, believe it or not, that medical education is based upon. There's probably a lot of stuff that doesn't work, and I've seen in the chat some ideas are already coming up with when somebody writes about the unfortunate, right? We know about, there's the things that we don't like. And I decided, well, let's not put it in a breakout room about what we don't like, because let's not start there, but I still would like to ask you, what are the barriers that you perceive in all your different institutions to scholarship? Let's put it out there, because then we want to work off the short thing. The way I'm doing this is I package this into a poll, and I would like to use from our institution Poll Everywhere, which you can access two different ways. So one is actually online, that you simply type pollf.com/SOM1 into your phone or your computer or really anywhere. One way to do it. The other one is that you start an address and you send a text to this number. Now the text that you send to this number is SOM1. And once you accept it from the system, you will get a response back. So you can really do it both ways. And I give you a little bit of time to set this all up. And thank you, Philippa, super. I'm looking into the chat if there is something else. Okay, you guys are ready, more or less? Okay. Yeah, lack of confidence. Yep, very human. That's what we are, right? Limitations, brings time. Thank you. That's actually so true. Rigid collaborators. Yeah. Aren't you glad I didn't do a workout group asking for barriers? Can you imagine? And honestly, I'm not going to give you a pep talk here saying, oh, just think positive, expand your mind. Yeah, we all know about this. We need strategies to overcome that. And yep, that's reality. That's a reality check. Anything that we encounter every day has exactly what you're writing here. There's the lack of confidence because we are only people, right? We might make mistakes because we don't know, or because we're tired, or because the kid was crying the whole night. We're humans, right? They're good collaborators. They're collaborators who might not. However, there are steps and tools and possibility we can do it about that. And the thing is, first, knowledge is power. The more we know, the more we can ask about, and the more we can say. Funding, time, yes. And the most important thing is always to have a plan. Okay, so I think we really put it all out there, and we know, yeah, it really sucks. It's really hard, and there's a lot of issues with that, and we know. And same goes for faculty, just to let you know. Same goes for faculty. Okay, guys. So let's see what we can do. And again, we have it all here and we bring it all together. Let's move on. First, you need to know what to ask for in order to really put this in motion and get medical education together. So what are the ingredients of medical education research? Because then you can go to a professor, to somebody, start a smart conversation and say, this is what I need. Okay. Just like any kind of research, you got to have a problem. You got to have a problem. So let's say you sit in a class and a certain session could be more interactive. That's a great problem because it's a solvable one. And I would guess a professor is probably pretty happy if students approach them nicely and say, hey, I've got a really great idea. Can I collaborate with you? Just an example. It might be a new program that you want. It might be just an improvement of a session. It might be a teaching intervention, which means you might want to have an entire curricular piece. That's well possible. So the next thing that you always have to do is looking for the gap. That means exploring the literature. And by the way, this is also a good help coming back to the word cloud that we just saw, because when you read literature, you see how other folks dealt with the problem and all these problems that you just had, because they all have them, believe me. Nobody has money or not enough money or just not enough money, right? I mean, it's this kind of issues where you pull your hair out, but they overcame them one or the other ways, in creative ways. There's not one way to do it right, but then you see how can they do it. Or maybe they're even collaborators of yours that you write them an email saying, hey, I'm a student at institution X. I really like your paper. Could I contribute blah, 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 with this idea? And people might reach out to you. So gap, explore literature and benefit from what's out there. And then you have to find a purpose. What is your goal? Where do you want to go? And also, who is your target audience? It's really important. If you want to make a better session for your peers, then clearly your peers are the target audience. And you will ask them and say, okay, let's make this session more interactive. Oh, okay, you don't want to do a breakout group. You want to do one-on-one. Okay, fine. Let's go to the professor and work with it, right? So there are ways to do this. But you've got to find, what are your goals? What can you do? What is achievable, right? And I would say with goals, start small. Start with the low-hanging fruit. Make it easy for yourself. You can dream big, but make it small, and then expand. Work with small little successes, and then you build yourself up. So these are really the three important cornerstones when you start with any kind of research. Okay, now from here, it's actually way cooler. medical education research, and in general, I would say educational research, has so much more to offer. It's so wicked creative. It's really cool. So there might be products that you want to do, and you probably have no idea what I'm talking about, but let me just come to a moment. What if your dream is to write a book about anatomy education? And I met a student on AMEE in Vienna, 2019, who actually did exactly that he said, well, anatomy was just difficult. He wrote a book. I think it was an atlas, and he put it online. So maybe you want to do this. Maybe that's your dream. Or maybe you want to write a lab guide for the anatomy lab. Or maybe you want to come up with a smart chart, one of these hard laminated things, right, to do a certain procedure, and you want to tack it on the wall because you know it solves your problems. Awesome. These are all the products that you can do in educational or medical education research. So that's why on my chart here, I put these both things. So maybe this is what you really want to do. And I put this here because actually one of my first things before I wrote my doctoral thesis was a lab guide. Simple as that. And it worked like this. You might also want to come up with a program. And I don't know how many people here know Healer's Art. It's in America. It is a kind of curriculum that gets sold, or that gets, disseminated to other places because it's standardized in a certain way. But it looks really into the heart of a physician and why you want to do what you want to do. I'm not sure if it's in Europe, probably not. Okay, Flip is shaking your head, but what I'm saying is that there are famous, well-known curricula, medical programs that are shared, that are, moved around and used. And writing such a program is really cool because you can give it to another institution and they will do it. Another example was I worked with the Sydney University, who gave a medical program to Vietnam. So that program was kind of set the way it was, and then we had to tweak it and work with it. And that's awesome because it moves education, it moves the world, it moves patient care. So all these things, they help. Then thinking about policies, maybe you want to be an advocate for a certain group of patients. You really need to learn how to write policies. In a way, this can be done in a research way. Awesome, You might want to come up with tools. What if you find a great way to integrate a camera system into whatever procedure you're doing? Okay, awesome. You want to check the effectiveness. That comes into medical education because you have to teach how to use this thing. So perfect. And then articles, of course. And on the other side that you see here, there is more the traditional things, but in a way you can get around them, but you can also make them very lean and adapted. You want to have your research question about that, such as, is this program effective? That's a perfect good research question for a program. You want to come up with a research procedure that you say, okay, I do a survey. That's the way to find out if my program is effective. You have the theory that group work is great as experiential learning tool. So you have your theory and your concept. So you will still not get around these formal research approaches. But what I'm saying is it can be very colorful, it can be very applied, and you can really, really give the world a great tool, a great product to move everything forward. All right. Okay, now the beauty in medical education, and I think I said this at the beginning, it draws from several fields of science: social science, anthropology, psychology, leadership, management, project management. Awesome, especially if you want to move something, if you want to get together with a couple of fellow students and say, okay, I would like to write a curriculum about social needs of this specific patient population. Great, then we have to kind of organize ourselves and kind of come up with a step-by-step approach in order to really get it done, because we also have exams, right? So there are so many other fields and so much more knowledge they can draw in. Then there are specific research methodologies, and two of them I will tell you in a moment. Also, when you learn these things, you might go into different electives in different countries, different places, wherever, people talk, right? Listen to them, what they tell you in terms of research methodologies. There's so much things that we can learn and so many new things. Or sometimes it's just even adjusting a research methodology, right? And then look at your mentors, look at your favorite teachers, right? You meet so many professors in your lifetime. Get yourself to know them. Make the connection, because it's not just a professional connection. they might tell you one of their research secrets, and that is awesome. You might want to hook up with people who are really supportive and nice and cool and have this knowledge. You want to really enjoy these collaborations, okay? So courses and mentors, of course, is the most rewarding way that you can do. And other than that, you know, especially in medical education, you can literally go to town with different fields. It's actually really pretty cool. Now, this is a resource here that I gave you into the chat, and it's pretty broad, but it also gets us the idea very broadly. In medical education, there is really different methodologies that we're going to use. And you know some of them already. I mean, students are over-surveyed. You already know that. But surveys are just a super important tool. And the earlier you learn how to do them right, or look into surveys and get your feel around them, the better, because this is just super important in medical education. Let's say you write a book, or you give a talk, or you do a program, right? You want to do a survey, and you want to ask if what you did was effective and moved something. And there are certain ways to do this. So we can have another webinar on methodologies, but just pointing this out, you know, this is things that you will need because you want to know if your stuff is any good, right? But lo and behold, when we talk about medical education, there is quantitative and qualitative things. Now, I just want to hear very briefly with thumbs up, how many folks here know what qualitative methodology is? Okay, maybe I should look into the chat. I don't see much. Everybody else has the camera off. Okay, go. Some people know. Okay, I see some hands up here. Super. Okay, you're cool. And by the way, all the folks here who know how it is, even the folks who don't know, the field changes so rapidly fast. So I teach about research methodologies, right? And then I read another paper and I'm kind of, holy cow, did this just change? So there's a lot of change all the time anyways. But these are the two biggest that you need to learn. One of these methodologies gives you numbers, the other one gives you descriptions. And especially in medicine, not everything can put into numbers. Humans don't come with numbers. Humans come with qualities, descriptions, and many of them are very hidden because we humans don't want to give them up, right? So hence, it is very important that whenever we do something in medical education, both of these are included. Now, qualitative talks about anything that is a phenomenon, so something that you see. Why in this place of my patient population is this seemingly this despair about whatever, even though a specific resource is there, right? Why? The why question. You won't answer this with a number. You will only answer this with sitting down, talking to people, listening to people, observing people, okay? And then, of course, yeah, there is surveys. And surveys tell you on a Likert scale, on a scale of 1 to 5, is this program any good? And people will say content excellent, time for interaction not enough. So then you get some numbers, right? And they also help you. But again, to read between the lines and to find out about the why people were unhappy or were happy. This is then the qualitative area where you need to learn how to do interviews, or focus groups, or phenomena. And by the way, I'm pretty sure that you as students, you were already participants in focus groups or interviews. I mean, that's what faculty love to do, right? We love to learn from you, so we ask you. Next time, pay attention how it was set up, because this is something that you can then use and assimilate for your own research. Okay, I think there's one slide more and then we go into other things. Yeah, narratives and numbers tell you different stories of research, okay, and they also shape your research question. So very often when you start your research, you also will find out the question doesn't really work anymore, and that's fine because we learn, right? And sometimes you have a really big research question of a big project, but in order to really get it done, you have to chop it down to a very specific thing in order to at least, you know, let's say get a talk together on something and kind of really focus on something and finalize a step. So look what you use and what methods work, and then they shape your research question. And very often medical education, and next time you look at papers, look for that. It will say this was a mixed methods paper. That means there is numbers and there is also qualities, focus groups. And take a look at that, right? When I say literature search, right? So this is your tribe. This is what you want to do. Look how they did it and what they did, because then you can assimilate and also look for yourselves. Okay, So lo and behold, I just put them a little bit side to side, okay? Qualitative and quantitative. And you will not remember all this, but you might kind of intuitively grasp it just for an idea, because it also helps you to approach the right person to help you out and what you want. There is you can write papers or give talks that are solely qualitative. You can do things that were solely quantitative. However, both is really mostly both sides, where you get both ideas and the why question answered behind the scenes as well. Okay, so where do you get your project from? Sometimes it might be the obvious thing, right? That you sit in a session and you kind of, God, this is bad. So you want to make the world a better place, right? Or you say, oh, awesome, I really want to hook up with this professor because there's a great idea and so forth. Maybe it's just excitement. So is there a research project in your educational experience that you run into every day? Or maybe you do a literature search for something else. You kind of, oh, awesome, cool. I really would like to write a little thing about that. Look for a mentor. Look for somebody who is fun, who is inspiring, who is cool to work with. And it's interesting, my previous boss, who was a microbiologist at a different medical school, she always said to me, Elisabeth, when you hire people, doesn't matter if they are not there with their skill, make sure they are nice, because you need to work with them very tight. And that's true. That's true. You can teach anyone, but make sure you have people who have integrity. Just saying. Most people do, some do not. And it just, it kind of makes things a little hard, sometimes harder than it has to do. Important thing here, though, and that's a formal thing, clarify the IRB protocol. Some of my research colleagues even say this is the first thing you got to do, because if you don't get approval, if approval takes 1,000 years, you might want to think about that, because you don't have 1,000 years, okay? You have only so much time, and maybe vacation time and maybe weekends when you write your research. So clarify the IRB approval. Maybe for a startup, it's best to hook with somebody up who already does this, because then you'll see how it's done. There's a question?
What's the IRB? Sorry.
Okay, sorry. Thanks. Super. In the United States, IRB means this is the ethics board that will give you approval. It's called something else in different countries. I think in Austria, it's the ethics board. So that should also be like Germany, right? And same things. And they also will say, okay, your research needs certain criteria, because let's say you work with animals, that's a different thing as if you say, oh, you just do a survey.
Yeah, like all over countries have it, but the abbreviation wasn't known to me.
Oh.
There's also been a question to your last slide, which was whether we can say that interpretation is quantitative research as well. In the table.
Interpretation. I would say so, yes, because in a way it's a perception. And there are ways to quantify perceptions. Ooh, that was really abstract, right? So what I mean is kind of people have opinions. People have opinions and feelings and emotions about something. There are surveys which give you numbers on these interpretations. So the good thing, what I also can go here more, and thanks for this question, everyone on the planet already had our problems, but there are also a lot of solutions. Many of these interpretations or many of these research questions had been tackled by somebody else, and very often there are already surveys done for a certain community that we can then use as well. These are called the approved surveys, or the kind of standardized survey tool, so look for that. Sometimes you have to pay something, sometimes there's a different version, sometimes you just write the author and say, may I use it? It's really cool. So very often there are standardized instruments out there that allow you to exactly solve that question, to interpretation in a quantitative way. Now, whenever something is quantitative, and people try to quantify nearly anything, right? It's usually a survey, it's usually a way to come up with a number. It always also helps to ask about the why behind. I hope that helps. Does this kind of help? Keep otherwise. Okay, thanks for the year. Cool. Yeah, ethic board in Slovakia. Yeah. So that's really what it is. So figure out, so back to the ethics board IRB approval, and I have to change the slide to make it international. Figure that out first, because it might be a holdup, and then you want to know, what takes the most time, because you want to clearly, make a plan how you do this. And when I say identify dissemination channels, find a way also where you want to. I mean, do you want it to be a handout? Do you want it to be a textbook? Do you want it to be a journal paper? There are different ways to disseminate. And this is really who is your audience? What do you want to change? And who do you want to work with? Okay. So actually, we had planned, we're running really tight in time, but I don't know, maybe I should be a little bit more straightforward. Find a mentor, a group, or a program. Scholarly opportunities, home institutions, student affairs, folks who are here. Look for faculty, senior student, or the publication. Hook up with people who already did it, okay? Apply for summer research programs if they are already there. Very important. So look around, what's there, go look across the sea, and when you're already in areas, when you're already in groups like the current one, awesome, then you definitely did something right. Get involved in societies, in conference. So this is AMEE. This is IMC. You are AMEE. This is IMC. So this is the American branch. But I'm pretty sure there are local branches of pretty much everything out there. Get involved. And as a hint, the smaller the branch, the louder your voice. Okay, the more important it is. Now, IMC I pointed out because they have a student professional committee, development committee, and there are sometimes grants. We really try to develop students as much as we can. I'm part of this community. So there are definitely ways out there, and we can have an offsite discussion who can help you and who can move your research forward. And then stay informed through social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Researchers might look for students, they might say so, and they might definitely be on the lookout. Dissemination can be any scale. Maybe it's only your honor society. Maybe it's only a student club. Maybe it's a talk. Maybe it is anything in between. Maybe it's a research question, paper. It really can be anything that drives the field, that helps you around. Okay, I wanted to stop here and actually do a breakout, but Philippa, I don't know if we have more time or if we just stop here and make this the open Q&A.
This is a good question. Maybe everyone can just quickly put in the participant list, you can go on the yes or no icon to display whether you are available to go a bit over time.
Otherwise, Philip, I have a better idea maybe. Instead of doing a breakout group, why don't I put the question in the chat that I wanted the breakout to deal with, and you can answer. And I think then, well, thank you very much. I see already some checks up here, but guys, that's actually bad behavior that I'm role modeling here of going over time. So why don't I put my question in the chat? And I really would like to hear your feeling and your thoughts about this. So what are effective strategies to start research in your environment? Why don't we do it this way? Instead of, breaking you out, that's what I would have asked. So what are effective strategies to start research in your environment? Why don't you let me know? Finding an answer, yeah. Okay. Sienna, yes, you raised your hand.
Yes, I wanted to just say something quickly.
Yes.
I know that a lot of, well, for me personally, I know that sometimes projects don't actually start out with the intention of research, but if you really analyze the work that you're doing, sometimes you find that, oh, I could use this information that I'm gathering for research, and then it could grow from there. So maybe just looking at the work that you're currently doing and the projects that you're currently involved in, I think that's a great way to start a research project, because you never know. So yeah.
Oh, Sienna, I couldn't agree more with you. And in order to drive this, so let's say you do something that you feel is totally mundane, right? But then you actually do some literature research, right? And see if somebody does this too. And then you find out, wow, this person actually did a survey, right? To check out an effectiveness about this little thing that I'm doing very similar here. Very, very true. So take the time at the moment if you have it, right? And look into the little things that you do. And if somebody did research on them and you find out, whoa, and there's a lot of ideas and a lot of cross-pollination and creativity that you could get from there. Find a mentor, networking. Oh, research database of faculty projects. Excellent, excellent. And by the way, very often the ethics board or the IRB for the my American colleagues have that. So if you approach the ethics board and said, okay, what projects are out there, you know, or even there might be a research project database, usually schools have that, they might tell you, and then you can sponge it off, you know, and see what works. Yes, approach faculty. Well, sometimes we believe in ourselves and sometimes we don't, right? That's just human nature. I totally agree with this. And again, you know, sometimes we're just normal people who didn't have time to eat breakfast. But be yourself, be polite, approach faculty, and come up with an idea. That's very true. And then drive it forward. And if they don't know, if they don't have the opportunity at this point, they very usually can point in a direction. Absolutely. Yes. Feel empowered. Yes, very true. By the way, I just flew home from Europe, right, to America. And of all people, I found a researcher on the plane. Now he found me. Go figure, right? We talked about behavioral sciences the entire flight. Awesome. I mean, these are things that happen. And then, you know, your wheels start spinning, right? And you come up with ideas. Yeah. Don't go about it alone. I mean, very often we do because some people are just more solitary thinkers, and that's fine. But go get some support. Bouncing ideas of people. Exactly. Keep in touch with good peers. So I kept in touch with a lot of professors that I've been working with in the past, and then, you know, write them a little thing. Hey, Vicky, can you look at that? You know, I have this idea. Is this any good? And so definitely. So that's a really good thing. Keep good people in your network. That is very, very good. And by the way, I might want to say something. If you have some cool ideas and you would like to write a blog, I invite you here. You know, if you want to do this too, that's also a way of scholarship. It's not an impact factor scholarship, but I don't. That's not my goal, so that's fine. Networks and opportunities. This is very, very true. Yes, go out, listen out, and if you're more introvert, by the way, think about your question first, and then go out and network, right, and have your question answered. So there's ways for all types of personalities and talents to do this. Be attentive, find opportunities, approach people. That's very true. Yeah. Also think about your own culture, right? So maybe you are a part of your home church. There might be certain rules and rituals that work wonderful in a certain ward in the clinic. Then you bring it from there, right? And this would be a really nice humanistic paper, for instance, right? So think about these things. There's a lot of cross connections that you can do. Leverage opportunities and network. LinkedIn email, yeah, that's so true. I have to update mine. It's just terrible. Yeah, Facebook groups, right? Yeah. The only thing with Facebook is just I found sometimes it's hard when there is no email but only Facebook groups, right? Because when you come from an institution, we don't. So at the professor area, we do only Facebook for certain things. So it doesn't. Social media don't always cross-pollinate. Sometimes they do. I'm just saying. But obviously I agree with all of that. So, but for finding opportunity, yeah, no. But LinkedIn is the big thing that's coming. Yes, Mashkur, awesome. Faculty love it. You know, they love to hear back. And if you tell them in a very approachable way what didn't work, you know, or what you say, wow, you know, maybe you could do this, you know, and be open, you know, for ideas. Totally cool. Show interest, yes, yeah. In a way, right, we mirror ourselves, we mirror what we want to see. So that's very, very good. Okay, guys, in the interest of time, and I have to apologize, I brought so much more, but I couldn't get to, but what I'm seeing here is really wonderful. Again, I make myself available here if you want to get in touch with me one-on-one. And Philippa, I think I don't want to overspend anybody's time here. I hand it over to you, but I will send you the slides, with all the ideas that I had planned, and then we go from there.
That's fine. Yes. So I hope everyone has enjoyed the talk from Elisabeth. There's definitely a lot of input, and thanks for engaging with us. And she will be talking at AMEE as well in a few sessions. So if you're not convinced that she's a great, inspiring speaker, then I don't know. So thank you for your time and your engagement. You really see that you are behind those interests that you talk about. So that's really wonderful. So thank you in the name of everyone, and enjoy your day. It's really early in the US right now, and that would be it.
Before we go, we'd like to take a group photo with Elisabeth and all the SDF. If that's okay with you, Elisabeth, just for our memories.
Sure.
So perhaps, Alec, if you could please do your thing, like give us a bit of an indication.
Okay, what am I supposed to do?
We're gonna
Just
take a photo. Just smile.
Okay.
If everyone could please put their cameras on, that would be fantastic.
Okay.
please.
This is part of networking and putting yourself out there, So
Sure.
we're actively implementing some of the strategies.
And if you could stop sharing your screen, then I can get everyone on there. Everyone on. It's okay. Perfect. Right, let's sort this out. Okay, so everyone smile. Oh, I'll just wait for the last few cameras to come on. I'll give you a few more seconds. Okay, so everyone smile. Okay, I'll do one more. I'll do one more with a countdown since it's a little bit more official, isn't it? So, one more. So 3, 2, 1. Perfect. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for that, Alec. Elisabeth, Philippa, and Alec, and Sebastian, if you're also here, if you could please just stay behind a little bit for a quick post-session reflection, that would be fantastic. But as Philippa said, thanks so much, everyone, for joining, and hopefully we'll see you soon.
A few sleepers. Alexandra? No, it just went in. Yeah, good.
There we go.
Sorry, Philippa, I actually sent you a message to remind you about the photo, but I don't think you saw it.
Yeah, I completely forgot about that as well, so good catch. See the power of teamwork.
Wonderful. Yeah, so I think go for it, Philippa, go for it.
Yeah, what just other wanted to say is we just come together as a group to reflect on the session for a short time, that sort of thing.
I'm just going to stop recording.
Thank you once again.